we've seen in the pandemic is that because people aren't, the service industries, right, have reduced significantly, that's hit a lot of younger people. And those jobs are not likely to come back quickly, right? I think even if we were to come out of stage 4 restrictions in about 4 weeks, not 2 or 6 weeks, from now, I don't think we're going to see the hospitality industry come back in the way that it was. So I think that the levels of unemployment amongst young people are going to increase. And I think we're going to see, unfortunately, the levels of the 80s in unemployment of young people back, right, for a period of time. And I think the trick will be how we address their readiness for the demand as it comes on, and how quickly we pick them up and engage and do something, and what the role of education and training and industry and community are to keep people moving along that conveyor belt, and so that they can jump off at any point and take opportunity, as opposed to being left thinking, well, there's not much we can do because there's no jobs at the moment. That cycled through that decade and into the 90s with the change in tariff, protections in textile, clothing, footwear, periods of substantially high unemployment. We haven't seen that for a while in Australia, and I think we're about to see it really plummet. And so what do you do whilst the economy is being sorted out and it then starts to grow again? And we don't know if that's going to be in 12 months, in 24 months. And even if it is, the recovery that then leads from that point is going to take some time. So then what do you do with people in that time? You know that they're not working, right? So you're going to have a higher number of people on, unemployment benefits or some kind of assistance. Let's not pretend that short skills training is going to get them to the next point, particularly young people. So, dare we go back to the data that's already on the shelf for us that tells us that the longer a young person's engaged in education, the better their lifetime prospects are going to be. So why don't we start, putting together some responses that engages them in learning, in connecting with community and with industry, even if it's not paid, right, at this point, as long as they're supported financially in some way. So it gets them over this period, but in that period they're engaged, they're contributing, they're learning, they're developing skills. I think there's a role for job creation programs again in this kind of, where we don't know how things are settling and things are so disrupted. But there's also opportunity. So are we providing those opportunities in those job creation programs? We'll need to probably update them, but the 1980s kind of, job creation schemes or social enterprises or things that allow people to create their own employment when the situation is like this. Getting better planning between, those big projects that we have in the state, and how do we link people to those, even if it's for short periods of time. You can only be in a permitted industry. We don't have our libraries open. We don't have infrastructure open for any of those students who may require that support. What we have tried to do is loan out on a case-by-case assessed, process. We have lent out, pieces of equipment and laptops or whatever to students where we've had those. Yeah, the demand is much greater. So what we've learned is that there's a greater percentage than I would have imagined of people who don't have access to technology. Right? And I think that surprised me.
Yep.
And it surprised me in who they were. So there's both in terms of physical access, and the other is in the level of comfort with the technology, and the support they need to actually be able to engage successfully. So we've had to do a lot of work with students in being able to move their mindset and their skills to learning in this way. And a lot of people haven't liked it because that's not what they came to us for. They came to us for face-to-face, right? It's practical activity. So it's been a particular challenge. At the moment, the vet market's declining. I think we'll see a rise in labour market programs, that you would have seen in the 1980s, reinterpreted for 2020 decade. I think we'll see a lot more of those. And I think we'll see an acceleration of technology in work that we probably would have expected to see, started to see in 5 or 10 years' time. I think some of those things are accelerated moving forward, and they'll provide opportunities. There's new jobs that'll come out of all of this that we're not quite sure what they'll be yet. So for us as an organisation, I think we'll be blended and online much more than we do. We'll be much more purposeful about the use of physical infrastructure. There'll be very deliberate reasons why we're doing face-to-face, not just because people come to school, right? So, and that'll be engaging and that'll be valued, I think, that face-to-face piece. But equally, we've got a lot to learn about technology-enabled interactions and communication and that kind of thing as well. So I think we're going to change significantly. I think the capability of our teachers will need to change. The thing that worries me the most, I think, for young people is that, there's been some studies done on loneliness, and I was actually shocked to find, although when I did actually think about it a bit and look at some of that data, that it shouldn't have been surprising that when you think of who the loneliest groups in the community are, you generally would assume that it would be people who are elderly, in their homes. It's actually young people who are the loneliest because they lack relationships, real relationships. They might have 500 followers, but they're not going to show up when you haven't got anything to eat and you've got a crisis going in your own life. And they've shown to be the loneliest group in our community. And if you think about where we either in the public space welcome them or not, where do they go? How do we support them as younger members of our community? We're not too good at that. And if they don't have those key relationships in, parents or extended family, they're really cut loose in a lot of ways. And technology seems to mask that loneliness, Then I think we see it in rates of suicide, a whole host of things. So that's worrying in this pandemic, because I think what it does is that situations like this tend to bring to the surface and accentuate, what was already there, right? Accelerates the problem. So that's worrying.